Good morning, everybody. As you're coming in, feel free to let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. We'll give another minute or so, make sure everyone's been able to join, and then we'll go ahead and start.
All right.
Okay. Yes, I think we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay.
So I am Michelle Kane with the Forest Landowners Association. I'm the Director of Communications, and I'm going to be starting us off today with Forest Carbon University. This is our new program funded by a grant from the U.S. Forest Service. And today we are going to be hearing from NCX on their program. So Joe, please take it away.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joe Vaughn, and I'm the Landowner Key Accounts Manager here at NCX. I come from a background of procurement and wildland firefighting, so I'm really excited today to share more about the data-driven forest carbon marketplace that we offer at NCX. You may be wondering why we do what we do. I'd like to share a story about the Evans family. Margaret's great-great-grandfather moved to Newton, Mississippi back in 1838. The home he built still stands today. Over the years, many descendants settled in nearby towns, establishing families and operating farms. Margaret's family grew corn, hay, and timber becoming the most valuable asset. Over the years, Margaret and her sisters learned to be good stewards of the land and have seen firsthand the impact of climate change. Both her and her sister and nieces lost their home in Hurricane Katrina. Every year since, they dodge increasingly erratic hurricane seasons, but hope to be able to pass the family land to the next generation. After in-depth research of forest carbon programs, they enrolled in NCX to support the upkeep of the trees they love and keep them standing. What's important to know about Margaret's story is that it might be unique to her and her family, but this is on par with what we've heard from hundreds of landowners. And I'm sure you all as state foresters hear this from your clientele very frequently as they're trying to manage their property to leave a legacy. Before diving in more into our program, I wanted to share the long-term mission of NCX. This long-term mission includes compensating landowners for maintaining or implementing other best management practices that help in sustaining water quality, preserve biodiversity and wildlife habitat, and even mitigate fire risks, to name a few. We're starting with forest carbon, and that's not our end destination, though. So what makes NCX unique, you might be wondering? Our program offers the landowners no cost to participate and no minimum acreage required. One of the smallest land holdings that I've personally have seen has been between, I think, 6 and 7 acres. And then also only an annual deferral commitment, so a 1-year contract. There's no other program on the market that's been designed to eliminate these barriers commonly found in other carbon programs. We're able to achieve this through leveraging the technology we've developed, BaseMap, and meticulously designing our methodology, short-term harvest deferrals, to support this framework. So we're making climate impact at scale. As you can see here, our participating landowners and coverage continues to grow. Our spring 2021 cycle, the very first commercial cycle, had 119 landowners, primarily in the US South. We currently have over 3,800 landowners actively participating in one of our quarterly programs. In the last fall 2022 cycle, we sent over 4,000 eligibility reports to participants interested in participating in our program. Let me share a video of our enrollment process. There won't be any sound, but it's about 50 seconds. sharing the wrong screen, but I'll just describe the video. So this short demo goes over what is needed to enroll in our process. So you will provide contact information, usually a first name, last name, phone number, and email. It's very critical to send us a working email because that's how our notifications are sent. And then you'll add your property details. So you'll select ownership type. That might be private, commercial / industry wood or timber, or it might be private family owner. And we'll provide some more definitions to that. But then lastly, we have this portal where it's very similar to Google Maps, and you'll identify your property on that map. And it's also very similar to tax assessor maps. And then once you select your property on your screen, you should be able to see 3 check mark boxes that you'll have to click. And that's kind of our terms and conditions agreement to request an assessment on all of your property. Now, we weren't able to see that video, but I can answer more questions about that towards the end. That said, there are 3 primary requirements to participate in our program. The first being the individual requesting an assessment must be the legal owner or manager of the property. As a participant, you must enroll all of the land residing under that ownership as another requirement. This is a critical component to our methodology because this helps eliminate activity shifting leakage, one of the main ingredients in the recipe for creating a carbon program or carbon project. And it also an element, also an element that carbon project developers have to account for. That said, it's not a requirement to defer all harvests across the entire land holdings, but we're simply assessing your cumulative land holdings. And then lastly, sellers must acknowledge that the credits sold reflect the volume that could be harvested in the next 12 months. And we do have equations to help you convert our harvest deferral credits to maybe how many green tons of pine is on that site. If you meet the eligibility requirements noted on the previous page and want to join thousands of landowners actively participating in our program, we invite you to request an eligibility report. On that eligibility report, we predict the landowner's business as usual scenario. This scenario reflects the volume we estimate as likely to come off the property in 12 months. That is represented in harvest deferral credits or HDCs. And those HDCs are what are sold into our marketplace in exchange for deferring timber harvest activity. Through our assessment process, we evaluate 2 primary categories: standing inventoried as measured by our base map technology and harvest risk. Standing inventory is comprised of our estimates of size and species across all forested acres. Right now, this map is currently resided to the lower 48. The harvest risk component is very similar to what I have done as a procurement forester. It takes into account market dynamics in the region to include property size, ownership information, proximity to mills, terrain, and slope. We're able to estimate the probability of harvest and the portion of carbon or really timber likely to be removed through those activities as represented by a HDC or harvest deferral credit. Once you receive an eligibility report, you can immediately send an offer. And then our engineering team works behind the scenes along with their business development team to match you with a buyer willing to pay that price. The new selling process was launched this summer and included market-driven data such as most recent 3-month and 6-month averages, very similar to what you can see on something like Zillow. And we also include offer examples that include formulas using property taxes or stumpage revenue if you're trying to figure out what you should bid into this marketplace. And then lastly, we also have outstanding offers and bid graphs that show what prices are being submitted on both sides of the marketplace. We hope that you use this information to identify the price to help landowners sell their credits for and the number of credits they want to sell. Once they've completed that step, they'll be prompted to finalize their contact information and then redirected to DocuSign to sign the seller agreement, very much like a timber deed. NCX conducts weekly matching events, and if a participant's offer is accepted, we'll notify them on that Friday, and they'll be accepted into the upcoming cycle. So you might be wondering, who are buying these credits currently? Historically, we've seen strong demand from Fortune 500 companies with ambitious sustainability targets. Included on this slide are some of these organizations that have purchased credits to date. We are continuing to grow our buyer base by reaching out to customers ranging in size, industry, and location. This summer, we changed the process we expected to use for a third-party certification, and one that better recognizes the value of short-term carbon storage in forests and also recognizes modern measurement techniques that offer increased precision for both buyers and sellers. We certainly want to be more transparent for the marketplace. We're currently working with our academics, advisors, and NGOs as we continue to work towards our certification. If your offer is accepted, you enter the 1-year harvest deferral period, also known as the performance period. As the performance period comes to a close, we get to work, or really the engineering team gets to work on calculating closing measurements. This is done remotely, but some landowners are selected at the start to have their property cruised, and it will be cruised again at the end. But a majority of landowners will just have their property remote sensed. Once measurements are taken and data is compiled, we generate a results report. A neat thing about this process is that for any reason a landowner disagrees with our findings, they can also issue a formal review within 14 days. They will first have to review the document that we provide. Here you can see the detailed statement of results, and they will see the accepted amount and what was actually truly delivered. If that contract reflects anything that doesn't look like the landowner expects, again, they can go through this formal review process within 14 days of receiving that results report. Once the results report has been approved, payments are issued based on the preferred method specified in their NCX account. We really recommend landowners to have their checks mailed to them versus wiring, because that is an additional fee. On this slide, these are the key buckets for participating, or key milestones for participating in our program. From start to finish, here are the 5 milestones, beginning with enrollment and then also ending with payment issuance. I've used our fall 2022 cycle as an example. Here you can see from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022, that is defined as our performance period, or the harvest deferment. That's for 1 year, but as you can note, the timeline does extend beyond that. And that's because our engineering team has to take time to compile those closing measurements I've mentioned, and also issue results reports for sometimes over 3,000 landowners. Landowners are under no obligation to defer harvest activity beyond that 1-year commitment, and we're always thrilled to see people re-enroll. But again, on day 366, you are free to continue harvesting. Now that you know more about NCX and how it's designed for landowners, I'd like to take a moment to answer 3 of our most frequently asked questions. I get this all the time, and even as a forester buying stumpage, it was always, what's it going to take for this to happen? So in this case, how much will a landowner get paid per acre? And this is really difficult to know without a landowner submitting their property information. So I hate to say it, but the answer is it depends. It depends on many factors that influence financial potential, including rotation age, species mix, and historical harvest activity. And then also, very similar to what I did as a procurement forester, you also have to assess the ease of harvest, like slope and terrain, and also take into account local timber markets. But for you all as foresters to help your clients, we recommend that most landowners who own less than 1,000 acres can estimate they'll earn anywhere between 1 and 1.5 credits per acre. Question number 2 that we get, what management activities can landowners do while participating in NCX? The Natural Capital Exchange is designed to incentivize landowners to defer harvest activity that would otherwise likely occur in the absence of our program. Our intention is to develop a flexible program that allows landowners to manage their forest land as they see fit. Activities such as straw collecting, prescribed burning, and invasive species removal are all permitted activities. Through our remote assessment, we evaluate the total standing carbon on a given property. If you're planning to remove any woody biomass that's greater than 2 inches in diameter, you should definitely reduce that volume of credits sold to account for that. Generally speaking, management activities that don't require the removal of timber are permitted. How are natural disasters handled? I know this is very top of mind for many foresters in this meeting right now. But if a natural disaster, if a natural disturbance occurs during the 1-year performance period, and this results in a landowner not meeting their deferral commitment within that contract, no payment would be made for the associated harvest deferral credit. We implement a reduced payment per HDC structure for deliveries below 95% of what has contractually been committed. If the percentage of HDCs delivered falls below 47.5%, then there be no payment issued at that point. Should a natural disaster occur, landowners will not be penalized and will not be barred from future participation in NCX programs. This question here, will landowners be eligible to participate in other forest carbon programs after enrolling in NCX? As you know, state foresters, you all need to be aware of this to help your clients do due diligence. But in short, the answer is it depends. Project developers like us, NCX, are able to enact program requirements at their discretion. Other organizations may elect to restrict or prohibit participation in their programs for a designated time horizon, and we encourage landowners to consider this when evaluating their options. So how others choose to structure their program is beyond our control. However, it is not a restriction NCX will enact, nor does it reflect how we expect to see registries evolve to support innovative methodologies in the future. Our program pays landowners to defer harvest activity for 1 year. Of course, we hope landowners elect to participate in subsequent cycles, but once that time horizon has been met, landowners have fulfilled our obligation and they're free to explore other programs. Couple more slides here. The Natural Capital Exchange operates on quarterly program cycles that align with our seasons. You can sign up by December 15th to join the NCX's Winter 2022 cycle. And I've also provided this link, landowners.ncx.com, for you to get started there. And with that, thank you so much for joining today's webinar. I've got the landowners team contact information displayed on the screen, but please don't hesitate to reach out. And I'd like to open it up for Q&A.
Well, thank you, Joe. That was a great presentation, and I really like you hit on a couple of new things, at least from my end, from last time, with the exception of yesterday's presentation, that seemed new with NCX. And I know that this emerging market is always evolving, as are the carbon market providers. So I'll just wait a second. I have a few questions, but I want to see if any of our state forester representatives, if you have any questions or comments, you can enter them into the Q&A or into the comment, and we can address them. And so let's just, I'll start it. So it looks like you guys have gone a little bit further in helping the landowner determine what type of bid they should actually put out there for their land by giving them some parameters, as well as how you come up with the credit price for a forest landowner based on mill location and a few other things. How have you seen that being received by the landowners and their ability to better match up their bid for the pricing they're hoping to get on their carbon credits?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've certainly seen landowners do what landowners do, compare those results of the harvest deferral commitments, or sorry, the harvest deferral credits they see on their report. And that report is basically a crew's workup. So the advice that we're giving landowners right now is you need to figure out the opportunity cost of participating in our program if you're going to defer harvest in the next 12 months. So they might have in their mind a lump sum amount of stumpage they expect to receive in the next 12 months. And what we advise them to do is no different than how a lot of consulting foresters help their clients, but to calculate a discounted cash flow, or basically what is the present day value of that future value. So they can just use a discount rate. And then once they have that dollar figure in mind or in hand, we support them with trying to figure out how many harvest deferral credits they'd like to sell, so that we can really get to the root of what that minimum offer into the marketplace needs to be. So again, we just are wanting to provide more flexibility. And we also realize that not all stands are treated equal. You might have stand that is managed very aggressively in the US South compared to something that might be more natural, slow growing, old growth compared to the Pacific Northwest, so to speak. So again, we just wanted to make sure we brought that transparency into this marketplace, so that really the end buyer who's seeing the opportunity to purchase that credit, they can see how it might vary differently region to region.
Yeah, I think that's a great way you guys have evolved with that. It also, if I understand correctly, and given the audience today are state foresters and field foresters who probably get a lot of calls, or just when they're out interacting with landowners who are trying to figure out, is this something I really want to do? What does it mean? If I understand it correctly, your platform would allow a landowner, with no cost or no obligation, to kind of dip their toe into it by entering different, filling out an application and actually getting some feedback back about what is on their land and what you guys foresee their potential without a timber cruising. Is that correct, that they can kind of get a little further along in the process of understanding the carbon potential on their lands without really having to engage or have any obligation?
Yeah, that's correct. So when it comes to the probably more traditional carbon programs, you conduct a feasibility study, which does require probably a management plan, and probably having a forester come out to that property so that they can take inventory and figure out, based on what is out here, these management activities might meet your goals. So with NCX leveraging our base map technology, we're able to leverage satellite data and LiDAR to estimate what is on your property. And then we utilize data sets that we get from the U.S. Forest Service, the FIA or the Forest Inventory Analysis data set. We might even pull in market data sets that have mill information from forests. And we combine all that information through our platform so that a landowner can just click a few buttons, request an assessment. It's a cruise workup. And then they can bring that report to a consulting forester or some sort of trusted professional in the industry, so they can figure out, hey, does NCX make sense for me to participate in the next coming cycle? Or should I be thinking about something else? And again, NCX, we're here to provide data so that that landowner, that forester, can make a more informed decision.
Yeah, and speaking of data, I know NCX had an announcement, I think, back during Climate Week. And I have seen this from other carbon market providers, some discussion on this as well. And actually from a lot of stakeholders in the climate finance arena, actually coming out of the New York Stock Exchange and others. But there seems to be an intensified focus on how can landowners, as well as how can corporations, seek layered co-benefits coming out of private working forest and public forest for that matter. So how can you take a landowner who might be in a priority area as identified by the U.S. Forest Service, or as identified by a watershed, and how their forest might filter water and supply clean drinking water to a community, or what might be that rural communities social equity, or what is that rural resilience? And so I think that's really exciting. I know for our landowners, and just for landowners in general, to be not only recognized for the environmental benefits that they are providing through working forest, but the economic benefits. But being recognized is one thing, but it looks like we're getting closer to where there's actually going to be payments made to landowners once we figure out how to monetize this. But it seems like that's already happening. So I know you have your weekly mashups, but has that already started coming into play for some of your landowners where if they are involved in certain species conservation or watersheds, that their carbon credits might be able to bid and go sell for a little bit higher?
Well, we are certainly on the path of compensating landowners for implementing those BMPs that might help mitigate fire risk or improving all the ecosystem services we need as a society. We're not there right now, but an example that I can give, in our last fall 2022 cycle, we had several landowners with land holdings in Pennsylvania. And one of the buyers Insight decided that they wanted to pay a premium to support the forest that they were operating their business in because of their sustainability targets. So we're starting to see buyers of these harvest deferral credits, or really just carbon offset credits in general, pay premiums because they really want to impact the community that's there. So I think as we start seeing more of these case studies and sharing more about how this is occurring, we'll be able to start stacking all these co-benefits that we see in the forest. I'm really excited about this because when I was a procurement forester working for the sawmill, it was very easy for me to walk outside to a track and see which tree would produce a 2x12 or 2x4. And I'd also realize, oh, those trees might make great pellet products, or that tree might just end up turning into chips to fuel maybe a pulp mill or something. So it's really exciting to see that there's going to be this opportunity created to have all these other natural capital. It might be water, it could be just wildlife habitat put on equal footing with timber. And, I expect that to really help elevate the value of these properties, because I know that's something that, for me, being a young forester, starting out in my career, I still hear a lot about the glory days where stumpage prices were unimaginable. So it's really great that I can be a cause in the matter now to maybe make that marketplace a reality again.
Yeah, and I have just one more comment, and then if we have no Q&As, we can wrap up for the day. But you said that, I think this is fairly new for this cycle or the previous cycle, where you're having these weekly mashups, if you will, almost speed dating for interested buyers of the carbon credits and, those that are becoming available from the landowners. So given that you're doing weekly mashups, it seems like the demand just we all read about it, but that kind of puts a finer point that the demand is really there. And I guess through your process and how you have the program, you're able to serve up and say, here are the credits that are out there. So on any given week, you're going to have, sales and transactions. And so am I assessing that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really interesting because it's really helpful for these carbon buyers or the Fortune 500 companies like Microsoft or Cargill, for them to see the inventory that's available. So right now, every single week, a Microsoft representative could potentially come into our marketplace and see, oh, we have the ability to purchase X amount of credits. In our previous cycles, what we would do is just lump every landowner together. And again, that's where we learned that we weren't able to show each stand is worth, a different price. But we would do this reverse auction system. So if a landowner had bid $5 and the market cleared at $7 because that buyer came in and paid that higher price, everyone below $7 would get that $7, and everyone that bid above that would be left out of the exchange. So we decided to make that change where it's very similar to speed dating. We have this weekly matching event. And again, it's just bringing more transparency for both the seller, the buyer. And right now we're seeing that we've got a lot of supply for our carbon program. And right now, as we continue to work towards our certification, we'll see more and more buyers come into this weekly matching cycle.
Yeah, it sounds like we could be getting to a point where, let's say the forest landowners is having their conference in Tennessee, and we want to offset everybody driving and everybody. Well, let's not use forest landowners because we already are contributing in many ways, our landowners. But let's say you're having a corporate, a corporate event. Amazon is having a team meeting in Arlington with their new headquarters. They could literally somehow figure out their carbon calculator of what it's taken to get everybody there, and then they could buy carbon credits from a landowner in Virginia. So yeah, I see some interesting marketing and locality. So, well, I've enjoyed this, and I hope I was able to ask some questions and feed the conversation. We see no Q&A, but please, reach out to me, reach out to Joe. Again, the reason we are having these webinar series is to give you this one-on-one, small, private opportunity to ask these questions. So, if you have questions and you don't want to ask them now, Joe, we will certainly share Joe's email if it's not already been shared. He's here to serve you because you're serving the landowners, as are we. And our role is to make sure landowners are fully knowledgeable of the legality, the contracts, the benefits, the things to think about before they enter into the carbon market, as we all seek to help with the climate situation and also sustain forest landowners and the economic viability of landowners. So we really appreciate everybody coming on today, and we look forward to the next one, and you'll be getting more emails from us. Excuse me. Thank you, Joe. Thank you so much. And thanks, Michelle, for setting this up. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.